Hi, this is Marc Harrison from Greenwich Associates. I'd like to thank ACI for inviting Greenwich to present today. We're going to be talking about a few different studies that we run at Greenwich. These are ongoing studies among small and mid-sized companies. And we're going to be also talking about some of the information that we collect throughout the year as it relates to e-banking specifically. So features and functionality comparisons of leading banking platforms. So if you could just advance to the next slide. I'll be talking about the role of e-banking in building and maintaining strong relationships. And then once I have completed my short presentation, Matt Ellis will be coming along and speaking a bit more about Universal Online Banker. So if we could just switch over to the other slide deck, please. So as I mentioned, this is going to be based upon several ongoing studies that we do at Greenwich. For those of you who are not familiar with us, we are a consulting firm that really focuses on the needs of the market in commercial and corporate banking. My comments today are going to be really more focused on the small and mid-size market for banking services. The following slide has sort of an agenda. There's three main points that we're going to be talking about. I have a Q&A there, but I think we'll hold the questions until after Matt Ellis has been able to speak. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is the mindset of executives in small and mid-sized companies. Growth is top of mind for companies in the current environment, but the numbers tell somewhat of a different story. So, for instance, if we look at just job growth, so thinking about how small companies in particular are growing, job growth in the first quarter of 2012 over the like period in 2011 was really only about 1 or 2%. So that's not really a growth picture. It's actually identical to the number for the S&P 500. So there isn't really any growth in the large end of the market either. There is a bit of a silver lining in the sense that the middle market is growing a bit faster than that in terms of job growth. There's 3 or 4% job growth. Still not, wonderful, and the unemployment rate's still pretty high. But the middle market is really the growth engine. I'm also going to talk about cash flow advice, something that a number of banks have. This is not news to the banks, but what may be news to the banks is ultimately when you ask a business owner, small business owner or middle market company executive, who do you turn to for advice? Frankly, the first name that comes out of their mouth is not typically a banker, and that needs to change if the banks are going to be successful in this kind of a low-growth market. Finally, I'm going to touch on some mobile technology trends. Greenwich has been reasonably, not very bullish on mobile historically over the past few years, kind of waiting for the ROI to be clearer. What it appears to be the case, however, is that the pace of innovation on mobile side has not slowed at all. Banks are continuing to invest in it, and we're actually starting to see now that there are some signs of interest on the small and mid-size market, in particular the small business market. So on the next slide, we have some information from what we call our Market Pulse study. This is fielded 6 or 8 times per year. And we looked at, in the first quarter of 2012, we did see that there was some optimism among small and mid-sized executives. What we've seen in the second quarter and into the third quarter now, the pessimism has sort of returned with a vengeance. So we have a general slow economic picture. The elections that are coming up, we have the impending financial cliff that Ben Bernanke talked about recently, where you have increasing debt, the expiration of tax cuts, and the prospect of deep spending cuts. That trio is really pretty troubling for business owners. They really don't know how to act or how to move forward in this kind of environment. The next thing that we also want to talk about is how the market, the financial market has stabilized, and that's good news. So the banks appear much more willing to lend. But as we said before, growth and cash flow are the things that executives really want to talk about. And I'm going to show you in a minute that these aren't always the things that the banks are leading with. So if your executives want to talk about growth and cash flow, talk about growth and cash flow. Don't talk about other things that may not be as top of mind to them. I also mentioned that banks are not typically relied upon to provide advice on things like growth. Small business owners, middle market executives, they'll look more frequently to a CPA. They'll look to a lawyer. So bankers need to get into that conversation. They need to assert that they have ideas for how to maximize cash flow, for how to reduce days outstanding, those kinds of, tactical discussions, and raise those, in the first discussion, not kind of wait and react when the person says that they're interested in hearing more about it. One other thing that we want to note here around provider switching is that it has decelerated from where we were a couple of years ago, where there were a lot of companies who were looking to potentially switch their providers, and many of them did. And we actually see some market position drops for some of the big banks in particular. So B of A, Wells Fargo, JP Morgan Chase, even in some markets, we've seen some reduction in their market position, and that just goes to show you that some of the big banks don't necessarily have the right combination of value proposition points. There's more turnover in the larger banks in many cases among the bankers themselves. So the smaller banks or regionally focused banks, higher quality service models tend to do better. And so we're seeing that as well. So we're seeing some market position shifts among smaller banks relative to the large ones. The next slide just graphically shows some of these statistics from our market pulse study. This one was fielded in the second quarter. So you see 65% of small businesses say that they're achieving revenue or sales growth. That's the number one or number two key imperatives, what they're really focused on. That number is about 56% in the middle market. Cash flow is the next one down, and you can see right here that it's a key need. 1 in 4 small businesses that we talk to say that cash flow issues is their number one need. So it's more important than growth. It's more important than cost containment even. So we want to make sure that bankers receive that message. Following slide talks a little bit more about how expectations have changed for I'm just going to go into a bit more detail on this note about looking for advisory relationships. When we ask, point blank, has your banker talked to you about cash flow? About half of the commercial banking market said no. They haven't approached us at all about cash flow, or if they did, they had a discussion that was really kind of product driven. So they said, okay, let's talk about cash flow. Let me show you our new product array. And that's not exactly the kind of discussion that the company had in mind. When they say, I want to talk about cash flow, they want to talk about, let's put everything on the table and then let's work our way towards the solutions, but let's not automatically just jump right to the product sell sheet when I say that I want to talk about cash flow. Online banking, incredibly important in the current environment. It's important for a number of reasons, not least of which because your market, your customers, small and mid-sized companies, are increasingly saying that they want to use the online banking channel for more things. So not just for initiating payments and for viewing account balances and those kinds of things, but doing more of their service kinds of actions. Learning more about the bank, frankly, about the bank's products. People are increasingly familiar and confident in being able to go online to research a whole variety of things. The fact of the matter is the banks have developed mostly what we would refer to as utilitarian kind of websites for doing the kind of the basic things that you want for online banking, but maybe not so much on the marketing side and certainly not as much on the service side. So we want to see, we have begun seeing that the first generation e-banking platforms have given way to a new generation that are much easier to use and navigate, that have more of a focus on things like cross-selling and showing the entirety of the banking relationship. So not just your cash balances, but things like investment balances, loan and credit availability, foreign exchange. So having a more complete view let's say, of the working capital management picture for a company, a middle market company in particular, as we start talking about things like international. But small businesses as well do need a broad array of online banking services in 2012. It's a market need. If you look on the following page here, we show some research that we did actually in conjunction with Novantis, another consulting firm, where we wanted to look at specific RM behaviors. So how did the banker present the capability to the customer, and what's important to the customer? So that number one importance chart there, 87% of companies that we interviewed, and this is a small, mid-sized sample, so similar to the one that I just showed in the previous slides, 87% of them said that they are looking for banks to meet specific company needs, but only 13% of those companies said that this is what the bank or the banker emphasized when they met. So you can see it's much more prevalent that the company would say the banker really wanted to talk about product features and functionality, which is an important part of the discussion. You can see it's the number two importance factor. But that gap, so that delta of 74% between what the company says is important and what the banker is actually delivering on. So meeting a specific company needs means you have to listen to what the needs are, and you need to really put those needs into the context of what you're actually selling. And that's not happening to a large extent. The following page goes a little bit deeper into the online banking part specifically, and this is from that same study. We asked, where's the innovation coming from? What drives differentiation and innovation in the banking relationships? And by far, online cash management was the key differentiator. Put differently, e-banking remains a key touch point for bank innovation. So when I said on the previous slide that the arms race is over, well, what we really mean is, it's not about the product features available online. It's now become more about workflow and more about, and so there's still the potential for differentiation. And we've had a lot of meetings this year and last year with banks, and we evaluate, I should have mentioned this previously, but we evaluate about 20 or 25 bank platforms every year where we look at the e-banking solutions, we look at the specific features and functionality that are available in the market. So this is a critically important point. Now, the other one, a little bit further down the list here, is under international payments and foreign exchange. I mentioned that a moment ago. This is for larger companies, so more in the middle market, and also for manufacturing companies. That number actually went up quite a lot in terms of its ability to differentiate. So regional banks in particular have an opportunity to go out to the middle market customer base and say, we hear you that international business is important. Many of the middle market companies in particular are looking at international markets as growth markets. So if the growth is mostly tepid in the United States or in Canada, Canada's a little bit better off, you could be looking to elsewhere to grow your businesses as well. The next slide talks a little bit more about serving client needs, and in this case, specifically through mobile. So this is the most recent research that we have in this deck. It just came out to our clients in the past week or so, in fact. We asked about, which channel or which point of contact is most important. And, it's been true forever. The banker channel, the banker, is the individual person assigned to a relationship. It could be a branch manager, it could be in a banking office. This is by far the most important point of contact. However, what we're starting to see, we see 69% for mid-sized companies, 53% for small businesses say that this is the single most important. In contrast, about 20%, a little bit less than that, in fact, of the small and mid-sized companies consider the Internet to be the single most important channel. So the Internet's not exactly the top of mind, the first most important channel, but we are seeing that the range of services, that what improving year over year, and I'll show that in a moment. But specifically to banking, the mobile channel for banking, we see that the frequency of use has increased over the past year, and also the importance. So how important is the mobile channel? Those numbers are increasing. It's still very early days yet, and there's still, I think, some selling that will be required on the part of banks to really kind of talk about what the value proposition is for mobile banking. But 12% of small businesses say now that they use the mobile banking solution frequently, and that's up from last year. And we saw a bit of a smaller increase, in fact, for the middle market. So small business market, we would suggest, is where most of the heat is for mobile in the current environment, but we do believe that there's going to be an important discussion in the middle market, in the large corporate market as well. When we ask about the importance, it's about 1 in 3 small business owners and mid-sized executives say that the mobile channel is important. And this is a change. I mean, so 1 in 3, still that means 2 in 3 they say that's not important, but it is still certainly moving in the right direction. So the following slide shows specific interactions. So if the RM is the single most important point of contact, and that's not likely to change anytime soon, what specifically would you want to do with an RM? So we highlighted a couple of things here in terms of initiating a new loan or setting up or creating new accounts. These are sort of higher value, let's call them, interactions. There's a fee associated with them, in fact. Then the next 2 down, resolving errors and gathering information. Those are also going to be very important. So if you have a major problem, you want to reach somebody right away, you call your banker, say, can you help me solve this important problem that I have? It's interesting, though, because those 2 in particular, if you look, are towards the bottom of the list on the right-hand side of the chart, where we've got internet banking platform. So you've only got about, a small number, 3 or 4%, that say that they would prefer to, go online to resolve errors. It's a bit higher. It's about 30% that say that they would gather information. So we think this is the real opportunity. So as e-banking platforms evolve from what we called earlier the utilitarian kind of mechanisms, things like providing more information, so cross-sell, in other words, you log in, you say, here's some important new products that can help you manage your cash flow more effectively. So using the online banking platform as a marketing tool. Not a lot of banks have been successfully doing this. It's been pretty sporadic. We think it's a huge opportunity. Also for error resolution, for other service requests. Well, you do see that there are some service requests near the top of the chart here, investigating the status of an unpaid check, for instance, as a service request kind of example. What we do think overall is that the internet, and this is on the following page, is evolving into what we call the default service channel. And, yeah, there we go. Thank you. So the commercial banking customers will, as we say here, gravitate online for inquiry and issue resolution. Once the tools are there, once the banker reinforces that, this is not a cost-cutting mechanism, you can always certainly reach out to me, I will address your specific needs. But in some cases, it may be faster or more efficient for you to actually solve here's some self-service tools. We highlight that self-service is among the most important tools that are available in online banking platforms. And one of the reasons why is because increasingly when you think about where is the place that you go for that single source of truth, for a lot of people, they want to go online, they want to do it quickly, they have a mobile device, they want to be able to get to the bottom of the issue very quickly. Trying to reach somebody on the phone, they're not always at their desk, may not always be convenient to try to, if you're in the middle of a meeting in your office, you have your iPad in front of you, maybe you'd be able to investigate, the status of that service request. And so forward-looking banks are looking to include a window, a viewpoint into all the open service requests for a given corporate or commercial customer. and seeing that in a single place. And when we ask customers, where would you like to see that information, they say, well, I'd like to see it online. That's where it makes the most sense. I'll walk into a branch and I'll interact with the people when called upon. I certainly want to reach out and talk to my banker when I have a higher value need. But for the day-to-day kind of issue resolution, I'd like to do more of that online if possible. This requires a significant investment by banks and maybe a change in mindset as well, to where the banks will integrate the offline, the traditional channels, and the online support interactions. And online meaning online, but also emerging importance is mobile. So if you're on the road and you need to investigate, an unpaid item, or if you need a mobile authorization to be sent to you, say, yeah, let me review this information, push it to my mobile device. Those are the kinds of tools that are going to really differentiate in the near term. We have some kind of data on the following page around smartphone and tablet adoption. When I saw these numbers, I really took notice. You can see a lot of advertising around smartphones. iPhone and Samsung are in this kind of very pitched battle at the moment. You've got executives who are coming in with smartphones and saying, I want to review my corporate email on this smartphone. Will you please make it work? So that bring your own device is a key kind of enabler for a lot of these kinds of features. So you see now 48% so nearly half of the phones in the United States are smartphones now. And that includes 2/3. So if you buy a new device, it's 2/3 of the time it's going to be a smartphone or a feature phone over a traditional cell phone. iPads as well and tablets. We see that this is a Gartner Group projection. The 56 million were sold last year, and they're projecting 375 million tablets, 2016. That's a big growth rate. And by the way, PCs are declining. So, PC shipments declined in 2011. So what we're saying here is that mobile devices, the growth there, people are going to want to view information there. It's going to require a bit of a shift in the thinking of the banks. Okay, so if we deliver information to a mobile device, how should it look? We don't want to replicate the web experience on a mobile device because the form factor is different and people have different expectations for the user experience. So we are becoming a bit more bullish, frankly, around mobile devices. And if you look on the following page, here's sort of why. And this is the last slide here, so I'm going to pass it over to Matt in just a minute. But if you just look at these numbers, you can see that there's been a change in the very important. So small businesses that say that mobile is very important roughly doubled from 7 to 15%, still a pretty small number. But if you combine the very important with the important, you get about 30% of small business owners and about 32%, so approaching 1/3 of mid-sized companies that say that the mobile solutions are important. And you see a corresponding drop really in that bottom of the bar there. The people who say it's not at all important, that number has dropped quite a lot, a 15-point drop, in fact, from July of 2011 to August of 2012, so just over a year. That is a huge change in perception of the value of mobile banking. And, of course, this question was also asked specifically about commercial banking. It was not about how important is retail online banking over a mobile device. This is specific to commercial banking. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Matt. I know I may have run over a little bit, but there's quite a lot of information in here, and I'd be happy to entertain questions in a few minutes.
ACI is thrilled to announce the availability of Universal Online Banker. If we can go to the next slide. In order to, we actually have a poll question that we would like to ask, and its relevance will become apparent as I go through my next couple slides. So you should see this poll on your screen now. What we're asking is, does your bank serve its small business customers from the consumer bank or from your cash management or treasury management department? And I realize that we're asking for an either-or answer. I realize that some banks may have a separate line of business that supports small businesses, but if you would, please indulge us and help us understand organizationally and technically in the bank, do you serve your small businesses? Is your ability to support them and serve them more aligned with the consumer bank or more aligned with the corporate or cash management organization? So that's our polling question. If we can go to the next slide, I want to talk a little bit about Universal Online Banker. And if you were to go to our website today, you'll see that one of the headlines on our website is that we are releasing Universal Online Banker 5.0. And if you visit us at AFP or at Sibos, you'll have an opportunity to see live demonstration of the software. But what I really want to do is there are two themes that we kept in mind as we released this product. The first theme is that our customers at ACI are banks. And one of the primary missions of Universal Online Banker is to give you, our customers, our banks, the ability to build a closer, more seamless relationship with your customers. And this slide, I was a banker for 10 years. I've been in the technology space now for 13. The lines get drawn differently at different banks, but generally speaking, banks are delivering their online banking capabilities through 2 or 3 platforms, typically a consumer product or a cash management product. Sometimes banks have a separate small business product. But when banks deliver software that way, right, when they package products in a way that makes sense for that bank, they inevitably and invariably create seams between their product sets. The most common time you feel friction, that bankers and their customers feel that friction, is if they are in the small business product and they're using it for information reporting, and perhaps they're making payroll payments, and maybe they're making domestic wire payments, and the product fit their business perfectly last year. But as that business grew, perhaps as they acquired another company, as their needs became more complex, what will often happen is that small business customer will call the bank or will talk to his lender and ask about positive pay, or they'll ask about the ability to do an international wire transfer. And invariably, what should be a positive conversation between a customer and a banker about how to do more business with that bank turns into a challenging conversation because the customer's on the wrong product, and I used air quotes when I said the wrong product. Because what often happens is that positive pay service that the customer wants, or the ability to do an international wire transfer, or in many cases, if that customer expands overseas and needs to make indigenous low-value payments in another country, very often the ability to support that function is not offered in the product that the customer is in, but is offered in a different product. And you get into a challenge where that customer is either going to have to log in to 2 different products from the bank, or is going to have to convert from product A to product B. And very often when they convert from one product to another, they find that the pricing for their underlying products and packages changes. So any of us who've worked in the banking industry have seen that. Whether a bank serves their customers out of 2 or 3 platforms, there are always seams between the edges. There are always features that are offered in one product but not in the other, and invariably our customers ask us for those things, and it creates a situation that is painful for the customer when it should be a situation that is positive because they're doing more business with the bank. So Universal Online Banker is built around the concept of providing a bank the ability to serve their customers in every market segment from a single technology platform. Universal Online Banker 5.0 takes us all the way from the ability to support the smallest of businesses up to the largest global corporation. And over the next 2 years, we will continue to expand Universal Online Banker to take it all the way down into the consumer banking space so that from one technology platform we can support consumers, whether they need banking services, investing or wealth management services, all the way through the small business, large mid-market, and large corporate space. I want to introduce just 2 quick themes here about Universal Online Banker. The first is a very powerful concept that we call class of service. And if you remember, I said that one of our goals with Universal Online Banker is to give you the tools to build a closer, seamless relationship with your customer. With the class of service, think of these as packages. You have the endless ability to create an endless number of product packages that include the features and workflow and terminology for specific products. Accompanying these classes of service, and if we turn to the next screen, you start to see examples of this, we also give you the ability to develop what we call user interface themes. So as a banker, using Universal Online Banker, you create classes of service to group functions for your customers, and you also create user interface themes, and you associate those themes with those classes of service. So that allows you to build user interfaces that are appropriate for small business customers, that are appropriate for large corporate customers, and to link those user interfaces with these classes of service or product bundles. Universal Online Banker is a multi-currency, multilingual application. It's been deployed in the United States. It's been deployed in Canada, in Latin America, in Europe, in the Middle East, in Asia. You can see examples. World Financial is a brand that we use when we demonstrate the system, but you can actually see some of our customers' user interfaces in both traditional and complex character sets. Interestingly and very importantly, Mark talked about banks' customers' needs for international payment services. It's important to note that Universal Online Banker supports not only payment origination here in the United States, traditional payments like bill pay and ACH and wire, but it also supports cross-border payments, typically thought of as SWIFT-based payments. But it also supports indigenous high and low value payments in multiple countries. Think SEPA payments in Europe, BACS and CHAPS payments in the UK, G3 payments in Singapore, CNAPS and BITS payments in China. So as we often know, many of our small business companies expand overseas and have employees or suppliers in the countries in which they do business, and they would love to have a relationship with a bank that allows them to make those payments from a single system. If we can go to the next screen, I mentioned when I opened, I think I mentioned when I opened, that we had two goals when we delivered Universal Online Banker. The first was to give you the tools to build seamless relationships with your customers. The second goal was to make your customers' lives easier when they're doing business with you online. And when I say that, I mean not only doing business with you on the web, but also doing business with you through the mobile channel. So just a couple more points, and then we'll open the presentation to Q&A. Four features that I want to highlight in Universal Online Banking that are really emphasized, that are focused on the second theme of making your customers' lives easier. This first one is probably a little bit more for you, but your customers, when you get it right, they'll love the fact that you're offering them the right product at the right time. We give you the ability with Universal Online Banker to query the underlying database to understand your customer's behavior. Show me every customer who has prior day and current day information reporting, who has lockbox, but who doesn't use wire transfers. Show me my customers who have an account denominated in a foreign currency, but doesn't use my international wire service. So we give you the ability first to query customer behavior in the system, and then second, to build marketing campaigns based on the results set from those customer queries. Incredibly powerful tool for you to understand customer behavior and to create sales opportunities through the online channel. Messaging Center, over the last 2 or 3 years, we've all seen providers of online banking systems build a portal, and Universal Online Banker has a portal. It's got a dashboard. We allow our customers to put widgets on that dashboard so that they can see payment information or information reporting information however they choose. But what we've really found is that customers want one-click access to the most relevant activities in their day. So what we've done in Universal Online Banker is to introduce this component that we call the Messaging Center. It sits on the very top of every screen. It's very unobtrusive, but it shows them, do you have any alerts? Are there any payments that need to be approved? Are there any messages that you need to react to? And when they click on that, in a traditional Web 2.0 user interface, the Messaging Center slides down, takes up a larger percentage of the screen, provides information on those payments that need to be approved or those alerts, and it allows the customer with one click to take action. Very powerful feature. Another feature, and really important as we seek to serve multiple types of customers from a single technology, Universal Online Banker has these concepts of complex entitlements or basic entitlements. So when you're setting up a small business customer, you don't have to expose all of the richness of the security framework of the product to that small business customer. Another example is payment terminology. Your large corporate customer knows what a PPD, a CCD, and a TXP. They know what those things are because they are experts in the US ACH rules and regulations. Your small business customers have no idea what those are. They know they want to pay their employees, or they want to pay a vendor, or they want to collect from their customers. So we give you the ability, whenever you're setting products up, to define whether you want to use advanced payment terminology or basic terminology. And then the last comment is that Universal Online Banker is pre-integrated with ACI's mobile channel manager, and in such delivers both mobile, I call it small screen user interfaces, so you can use your browser on your phone or your browser on your tablet and see an optimized user interface for that screen size. But we also deliver, through the mobile channel manager, native apps for iPhones, for iPads, for BlackBerries, and for the Android operating system. And one of our experiences, as we have worked with our customers as they have rolled out mobile, is the more you do, the more your customers want you to do. So what starts with, show me my balances and let me approve payments, quickly turns into, show me my balances, let me create wire payments or ACH payments from templates, and let me make my ACH or my check positive pay decisions online. So the more features you enable through the mobile channel, the more features your customers will ask you to enable through the mobile channel. So we continue to add not only additional device support through the mobile channel manager, but we continue to expose more and more business functions that were previously available only on the web. We are making those business functions available in our mobile solutions as well. So that concludes my comments. It leaves us with about 15 minutes left. Actually, it looks like, and it's amazing, we serve our small business customers. It's 53-47, so just a slight bias towards supporting your small business customers out of the cash management side of the bank as opposed to the consumer side of the bank. Fascinating that continues to split almost right down the middle. But that ends my prepared remarks, and I open the floor to questions. So this is Matt. There's a question. There's a question about, did ACI build Universal Online Banker from scratch, or did you buy a company and enhancing this software? Universal Online Banker comes to us through the S1 acquisition. S1 sold this product originally under the name of Corporate Banking. We have rebranded the product and invested significantly since the acquisition to continue along the S1's strategy of taking the product formerly known as Corporate Banking down into the small business space, and we will ultimately take it down into the online banking and the consumer banking and consumer investing space. So this is a product that was formerly sold under the brand of S1 Corporate Banking. With the acquisition of S1, we have rebranded that product. We call it ACI Universal Online Banker. The current release is 5.0, and I hope that answers that question. Let's keep looking.
Matt, this is Marc Harrison. I see a question as well. What is the key item or issue for small business online versus commercial? I could take a stab at it. Maybe you'll want to join in.
Great.
The key issue, and Matt mentioned it just a moment ago, is does the small business banking offer have the requisite products in it? The sophistication of small businesses is increasing. They want more international. They want more visibility across the entire working capital management. So looking at their viewing their loan balances, viewing their overnight deposit products, those kinds of things. So, and many of the small business focused solutions from the bigger banks in particular don't have the breadth that the middle market or large corporate platforms have.
Mark, I see a question actually from a person I used to work with So the question here is, with regard to serving small businesses on the cash management platform, do you find banks are allowing businesses to commingle accounts, i.e. let them transfer money from their personal account to their business account? We do see that, particularly in the small business space, and we actually have customers today. We have banks today who are allowing their customers to, if you think about it, very often the owner of a small business has a personal relationship with that bank as well, and that owner would like to be able to see, doesn't want to log in twice, would like to be able to see their family checking account as well as their small business's checking account. And again, we all know that you're not supposed to do this, but very often some of these small businesses do commingle funds between the operating account of the business and the owner's family account. So we do see it, and we do see banks allowing their customers to do it. Another one here, what are small businesses and other market segments are going to Mac as Apple gains popularity? What are your plans to develop and support Mac customers? At ACI, for Universal Online Banker and for one of our other online products, Enterprise Banker, we already support Safari as a browser. We support it both, believe it or not, Safari runs on the Windows operating system. It also runs on Apple's operating system. So we support Safari both on the Mac and on Windows computers. We have native iPhone and iPad apps on the mobile channel as well. Mark, you see anything else you want to pick off here?
Yeah, there's a question around wire transfer transactions, how many of them, what percentage are typically submitted through online bank. That question may need a little bit of refinement in terms of online banking, because what we would see is that there's a large proportion that are initiated through the direct channels. So in other words, particularly in the corporate and the middle market space, companies are increasingly looking to upload a payments file. They don't want to initiate wires individually. It's a bit different in the small business market, but again, we're starting to see more demand for even small companies to be able to say, yeah, you mean I can upload a file that'll have all my vendor payments and my payroll, and I can do that, in sort of unattended fashion, or at least, manually upload it, and that makes a huge impact. Not having to go in there and manually enter those in.
Thank you I think that particularly as you enhance the question, I think it's a great point. I just want to expand on that a little. Within Universal Online Banker, we've got a module called EFD, which stands for Electronic File Delivery, which supports exactly what Mark discussed, which is the ability for a customer to upload a file of mixed payments. That file might include payments that need to be rendered via paper check, some that will be settled through ACH, some that might be settled through wire. So we give your customers the ability, rather than entering those 150 payments every Friday, we give them the ability to take that data out of their accounts payable system and get it up as a file into Universal Online Banker. But increasingly, as you look, we see much, much lower and lower percentages of wires being created manually. I've actually seen a number of banks that have said, we won't take telephone wires anymore. You have a number of choices. You can use our online banking product. You can come into our branch, but we won't take a telephonic instruction anymore. The risks around wire fraud just get too high. So we see an increasing number of banks pushing customers to the online channel or forcing them physically into their branches to originate wires.
Yeah, I hear the same thing. As a matter of fact, I have a personal sort of little short anecdote I can share on this. My wife's a small business owner, and she has a relationship with a bank. Unfortunately, not an ACI bank, so I won't name them.
We'll fix that.
Yeah, right. So we were closing on a refinance mortgage, and we needed to send a wire payment to the lawyer. I'd never sent a wire payment, and the small business solution offered by the bank doesn't have a wire transfer module in it. So I went into the branch, and I said, we want to send some money to the lawyer to close on this refinance. And the branch personnel opened up on a browser the exact same corporate online solution that I'd seen from one of the big banks, and initiated that wire and sent it. And I just said to the person casually, I could do that. I've seen that product. I told them what I did with the online services benchmarking program, and it just reinforced to me that, this is the kind of solution that should be more broadly available. to small business folks. And it just, it's because it was, to use Matt's phrase, my wife was in the wrong product.
Yep. And she would much have rather initiated that wire from the online banking product, but she just, that functionality was available on one side, in one product, but not the other. There's a question in here that I'm happy was asked and that I want to make sure that I answer clearly and very explicitly. The question is, are you trying to replace Enterprise Banker with Universal Online Banker? And let me put a little background context into that. Enterprise Banker is one of ACI's online banking products. We have dozens and dozens of banks who use Enterprise Banker here in the United States. They use it. It is a product that's focused in the U.S. marketplace. Its user interface is in English. The payments that it supports are ACH Wire, ACH Fedwire, SWIFT, and bill pay payments. So Enterprise Banker is a product that ACI has sold, continues to sell, and will continue to invest in for the U.S. marketplace. It's a product that already has, and for more than 5 years, has elegantly served from the low end of the small business space up into the high end of the corporate banking space. It's a great product. We continue to sell it. We continue to support it. We continue to invest in Enterprise Banker. But Enterprise Banker's target market is exclusively here in the United States. Universal Online Banker is a product that is global. It's a multi-currency, multilingual solution. We have sold it, and we'll continue to sell it all over the world. It supports today, with Universal Online Banker 5.0, it supports the smallest of businesses to the largest of global corporations. And over the next 2 years, we'll continue to invest in Universal Online Banker to support consumer banking and consumer investing features.
Matt, there's a question posed. It says, you mentioned the sunsetting of first-generation platforms in the market. Can you expand a bit on the features or functionality clients are looking for from their next-gen platforms? I'd be happy to do that. Online services benchmarking is a forward-looking program that we do. In other words, we spend time. As a matter of fact, I'm spending some time later today with a bank who is showing us the next generation features. And I spent some time at an innovation lab at one of the big global banks earlier this year, just kind of looking, not just 1 or 2 years out, but further out, and trying to understand what really is going to drive innovation in this e-banking market. And by e-banking, I mean the file channel, as well as SWIFT, as well as online or internet-based banking, the full gamut, because from the perspective of customers, they really don't want those distinctions to be drawn. They want to have a relationship with a provider that gives them a whole range of ways to communicate. So I mentioned cross-channel support before. That's a really big one. So if you want to look at which next generation opportunities will banks focus on over the next couple of years, 2-3 years out, cross-channel support. So making that support experience easier. To use my example, when I walked into that branch to initiate the wire, I'd want to be able to view, the status of that wire and receive email notifications. I didn't get anything like that. I got a printout from the person at the counter, which was fine, but it wasn't, it wasn't as high touch. I think that would have been better. And they didn't call us up either. The banker didn't call us up and say, hey, you need to send that wire. Maybe we should set you up on our system. That call didn't happen. And I'm here to tell you that I noticed that call didn't happen. Collaboration. So collaboration features are increasingly prevalent. So in other words, if I am viewing a report that I created, so I've filtered a number of transactions that I would view to be important that somebody else needs to view, how can I share that securely with other people in my organization? What if I extract some information about accounts that the other person doesn't have access to those accounts? They can't act on anything that I send to them if they don't have access to those accounts. So banks are really focusing on collaboration tools to where I can push information to others in the organization, and depending on their entitlements, they would be able to view the information I'm sharing with them and then act on that. So here's a series of problem payments that need to be repaired or fixed. I send it to a group of people in my organization, and depending on their entitlements, each one of them will take one or the other of the problem payments and address them and repair them in a secure form, way, which would be within the platform itself. So in other words, I'm not exporting information to a PDF and emailing it as an attachment. I'm not printing it out and bringing it over to people and leaving it on their desk. That's the kind of security risk that the compliance officers have fits over, because there could be information in those printouts that should not be viewed more broadly than so. So sending it online through the platform itself, I think banks are thinking about this. It's really they're whiteboarding it at the moment, but that's where those are a couple of different things, and then maybe a third one would be more automation within the online platforms, to where you don't have to go in and run the report every day. The report's automatically scheduled and delivered to you securely, within the platform or to a mobile device, or really however the information should be delivered. And it's user level preferences to drive that level of automation.
Thanks, Mark. There's two questions in here about mobile. So let me see if I can answer both of them quickly. The first is, does Universal Online Banker 5.0 support mobile banking? Yes, it does, both through user interfaces that re-render for smaller screens, as well as through native downloadable Android or Apple, either iPhone or iPad-based apps. The second one was, and this is a really insightful question, and I think it's right. I mean, clearly, whoever's asked this question is they're at the same inflection point that a number of the customers that we speak with are at, which is, did you find that creating a mobile native app for Universal Online Banker was a must, as opposed to just keeping the browser version? What I would say, and in conversations with a number of very big banks, is that a lot of banks have rethought the downloadable app strategy for the tablet. So what a lot of banks have said is that, you know what, I'm not going to build a special downloadable tablet app for an Android tablet or for the iPad. I'm just going to re-render my HTML user interface either in the big screen mode or the small screen mode. But what we found is that, particularly as you move down to an even smaller screen, to a phone, particularly to the iPhone or some of the Android phones, that when you go to that different form factor, having a downloadable app gives you so much more control. That we felt strongly that there's no doubt or ambiguity that you need a downloadable app to get the richest experience on the phone. And that becomes particularly true as you start to think about some of the things that are going to happen in the phone, as you start to think about person-to-person payments. Your app, when you say, I want to pay, John Smith, if you want to send that payment to John's email address, the ability for that phone app to have an API call to the address book that's on your phone is incredibly powerful. So there are actually a number of banks who are considering not building tablet apps, but it's been our experience that particularly in the phone space, that the richest experience can be built with a downloadable app.
All right, gentlemen, if we've reached the conclusion of today's presentation, I would like to thank everybody for joining us today.